Hello and welcome to a random video about old cars. Here we have my current project, a 126 chassis short body. Made these with an additional 4 inches or so in the door here. However, I like the short body as it seems to handle the best out of the 3 versions of the 126. This particular one swapped over a W126, large turbo, aftermarket exhaust manifold, standalone transmission and engine computer, 7.5mm diesel neck and pump. Yeah, so it's pretty fun. Transmission's a 722.6 out of a S55. Still need to trim it out, make a little display there. Still have a analog EGT gauge, which isn't exactly the best, but hey, I want to know exactly what the temperatures are so I can get a screen in there showing boost and EGT as well as other things. So today, time for this new differential. This one's a 3.06 on a 210mm gear set. The 91 and 92 300 CEs were the only ones in the US that came with that, and a ABS counter on the pinion shaft. You could use the older R107 306, but figured to make it easy without machining the pinion, you could use the 124 306 gear set. I put the carrier on this one rather than the clutch pack LSD. This one's Origin, opposing gears. So it's the Wave Track model. And very tight, ready to go. So I had that, and then I have some new axles built by CVJ in Denver. And a much thicker rear sway bar that I need to put in there as well. Well, here we go. First step, we'll go ahead and move this thing forward so I can get it up in the air. Oh, look, a dog. And more dogs. Very interesting, eh, dogs? They're most fun. Doing diff swap in tiny little garage. We'll go ahead. No e-brake. Neutral. Probably enough there. I go ahead and leave it in neutral so I can spin the drive shaft while I'm under there. A little bit tight, I'd say. Do what we can here. I have plenty of room back here to jack it up. The issue is I'm going to have to drop this whole exhaust. I'm in there. I'll probably do a swap the valve body on the transmission. A while there I was having overheating problems with the transmission. I was thinking, oh, maybe the valve body wasn't or sticking or something, so I put a valve body from a 07 Jeep in there. But now I'll return it back to the AMG valve body. So, time to start jacking. Alrighty. Well, got the old Mercedes up on the jacks here. Got the differential out. Get some light on the subject here. Now this unit wasn't, this particular unit's out of a 300 SDL, so it's a 288 185mm gear set. Just happened to be the highest ratio I had laying around. This car stock came with a 327 210mm gear set. But here we can see the much thicker sway bar than the original. It's also adjustable, so I have 3 holes to choose from. Just the stiffness. Comes with some much larger mounts. And about the R107 metal sway bar links rather than these plastic type. They do break. Actually broke that off just moving it because it's way easier. At any rate, what I have to do is put that all together. Look under here. If I can take these units out as a whole assembly, it's much faster, maybe 30-minute job. I also have to replace all those bushes. So looking under here, let me turn the light back off. A little wide angle. A little bit dirty, but yeah, I live on a dirt road and I drive this car, so Tends to happen. Someday I'll take this whole rear subframe out, sandblast it, and powder coat it. For now, everything's pretty good shape. I assume the previous owner did some. Just probably one of the tightest 126s I've driven. It's got 270,000 miles on this chassis. So I don't think it's all stock. Who knows? These things hold up pretty well. You may notice fuel pump's a bit different. It's because this is a diesel. It never had a fuel pump here, so I used their location for the gasoline models. That's a 4 below. Oh, heck, I don't remember the model. Big canister fuel filter. This little guy here is for auxiliary diesel heater. I have a check valve down there. It's actually right there. Check valve and a Y. And this feeds the diesel preheater. And this, of course, feeds the car diesel. And he used all, custom wiring. Let's see, these little exhaust hangers I just have in here. As you can see, the exhaust is sitting on the floor. It's a 3-inch stainless turbo back that I built. Someday I'll probably, let's move up here. Someday I'll probably change this from a single 3-inch to maybe 2 1/4, 2 1/2, just so it fits. And this is normally back up in here, but as you can see, it hangs pretty low, and I don't like the exhaust being the low point. Gotta do what you gotta do to get by that passenger footwell there. Right now, this is still running the stock drive shaft, stock flex discs. Fits perfectly with the 722.6 and, everything being modified. I do have a spare one of these on the 350 SDs. They are 3-piece. And I haven't had any problems yet. I'm only probably pushing 300 some horsepower through this. But the S500 from the 2000s are several millimeters thick, more thick than these old 126 discs. So I start having issues. I can shorten both these front and rear shafts by that distance and then run the thicker W126 discs. And they're the same dimension this way. But that's several thousand miles with OM606. A couple big poles, maybe pushing 450. Maybe it turned down because I don't want to rip this car apart. It's plenty fun with, a little over 300 horsepower. I think that's what the 560s were stock anyhow. There's not a lot different between these. It doesn't have the self-leveling. It's just a, conventional suspension setup. Some of the other, I think I could even get them on the 300 SELs and SEs. Maybe not in the US so much, but get an anti-squat suspension that has a hydraulic suspension that keeps it level when you're flooring it, because this thing does squat quite a bit when you're gunning it up hills and stuff. So I can see that. We'll never convert this car. Some people do it. They put a tandem steering pump from a 124 on there and retrofit a system, but this is just my cruising car. I'm not out racing it or anything. Kind of silly to race a S-Class. Yeah, so that's that. I just need to reassemble everything. I figured I'd show you what the differences are on the parts. This bigger sway bar, I believe, was made by Monroe. It's like American suspensions. There's a gentleman on the Finn's World that did a group purchase and fairly reasonable price. So real curious to see how it handles with that. I'll probably set it to the stiffest, which may make the rear a little bit more tail happy, but that's kind of the way I drive anyway, so not too worried about it. I always back it off a little bit. The front on these cars is quite a bear to get out. It actually goes back up under the here, I'll just open the hood. You can't really see it down there, but underneath this whole second firewall is that sway bar. It pops out up under here. It's already pretty substantial. These do have a problem where they rot out just on this tip. Like I said, somebody took care of this car. None of this stuff's blistering apart. I did have to change those bushes when I was building it originally. And there's some rust and stuff in there, so once I do have to do the suspension, I'll tear all this out, sandblast it. If it's any rust holes. A lot of times behind these plastic covers, there's a guide rod that mounts to these. And they tend to get rusty under there. I had a 500 SEL that whole corner was just rotted out. This one's fairly decent. I mean, these guide rods are probably, I don't know how old they are, but they're starting to knock a little bit. Not too bad. Here's a better view of that exhaust hanging down. It's pretty low. I mean, I really like that. But I had to keep that clearance. It does get pretty toasty. Don't mind my welds. I was just learning on this thing. These clamps are leaking a little bit. Just did these quick braiding clamps because it's pretty handy being able to rip off a section as you need it. But alright, let me go get the rear end together. We'll drop the tranny pan and get that done so we can start tuning. Everybody's favorite. Alrighty, got the sway bar in and said to change this rear subframe mount. It'll be a differential mount on the earlier cars. You can tell it's been bottoming out. On that whole 300 SDL I pointed out, there was a pretty decent one on there. So like that, and looks much better. It's been bottoming out. We'll see what happens when you throw 400 foot-pounds onto it, but hey, looks good for now. Got our new bushings in, front, rear, top, and bottom. Just need to get these axle bolts sorted. It'll be ready to go. The ABS sensor does line up. Whether or not that's going to work with the stock ABS, I don't know, but use that same signal for the transmission, wheel speed, and speedometer. So hopefully it's good. Sway bars in. Put it on the tightest setting. It's pretty sharp angle of that link. See how that goes, I suppose, but it should be alright. Clear of everything. The bolts I was going to use on those original axles, I think they're off of 560. That was not as bad as the others, but somebody buggered them up pretty bad. So I hadn't pulled the other ones off. The other axle was in here. Luckily I already had V8 axles on it, and they're triple square. I just need to clean these up and paint them. Clean these little retainer washers as well, because they're all grungy, but at least they're not stripped out. Thanks to being triple square. Should be pretty good. Come along. Drive shaft's bolted up. And these little axles on there. Then it'll be time to make some minor adjustments to the exhaust. Get that on here. I can move up to the transmission, remove that valve body and swap it out. Very fun laying on the ground doing all this, but hopefully I won't have to do that for quite some time. Also, I need to remember to put fluid in there. Maybe I'll do that tonight also. Once the paint's drying. Exciting times.